Thanks for tuning in to the Medevac podcast, powered by the Robert Irvine Foundation, whose mission is to support and strengthen the physical and mental well-being of our nation's heroes and their families. I'm one of your hosts, David Reid.
And I'm your other host, Christian Meyers. Thank you very much for joining us today on the Medevac podcast. If you're new here, there's a price for the show. You have to share it with a friend or family member if you get something out of today's episode. It's the price. If you make it to the end and you haven't done it, you're fired.
Yep.
Sorry about it.
Don't even bother coming back.
Yeah, we won't see you again next week. Our guests today, we have two guests. This is kind of a part two from last week's episode. We have Ernie Colling. He is an Army veteran and the founder and CEO of Transcend. We also have Brendan Quisenberry on again from last week. You'll remember Brendan is a Green Beret and also the executive director of the Transcend Foundation. It's a great episode with him. If you missed it, go back and listen because you're going to miss some parts today. But thanks for joining us today, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Being here.
Yeah, I think we're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive into talking about hormones and hormone replacement therapies and Transcend and how much of an impact it has now on our nation's veterans and first responders, which is pretty incredible. So thanks, guys, for joining the show. I do want to pump the brakes before we dive in and just do a little bit more of an intro for you.
Sure.
And talk about what inspired you for joining the military, how your time was in, and then we'll really dive into the bread and butter of this episode.
Well, it's a uneventful story, but a story that most would have, young and looking for opportunity. When I joined, I'm a little bit older, so it was right at the point in time where in Detroit, a lot of the manufacturing kind of went away. The line jobs went. So the guys that were getting out of high school, they thought they were going to go right to Ford, Chrysler, or GM, make $80,000 a year right out of high school, and life was going to be good. That suddenly went away, and I didn't want to go to college at that point. I didn't really see anything for me at that, so I just said, screw it.
Yeah.
Army it is. We're doing it.
That devastated the community up there, right?
It did.
Yeah.
It really did. And it had such an impact, because it was, the suppliers, and then that affected the housing market, which affected construction and the trades. And, there were so many effects behind it that, for me, the best way to navigate that was to go find something else and a better path. And I'm glad it did. It made me a better person. It gave me kind of the real perspective on what matters in life. So it was good.
It's good. So you joined in year 2000, right?
Yeah, right at the end of 2000.
Okay. Did you just graduated high school from there, or?
No, a little older.
Okay.
I was in a band and doing things like that.
Nice. What you play?
Guitar. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it was fun. Had a good time. Being young and stupid, and realized I wasn't going to be a rock star, and then had to actually pay the bills, and that wasn't doing it.
Okay.
So
what genre was it? I just have to ask.
Oh, well, that was during the Kid Rock days. So now I've showed my age. So it was that classic metal rap kind of a thing.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Nice. It was we were a cross between Rage Against the Machine and anything like that. Any
nice.
rap.
Okay, I'm into it.
Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah. No, that's you got to wake up every once in a while. So it was the Army for you.
Yeah. My options. Shit.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Be a rock star. Join the Army.
Yeah.
So you find yourself at the Army recruiter's office.
Yep.
And did you know much about the Army? Did you have family in? What did you know what you were going to do?
No, none of it. So, I kind of came in, from blue-collar neighborhood, blue-collar background. In Michigan where I was at, there really wasn't a lot of strong military influence. So for me, it was kind of see what was there. I knew I really wanted to go the infantry route. That was my preference.
Sure.
And, the recruiter just saw me coming. He's like, oh, we have the perfect position. It's 11 X-ray, open contract. That means you can do anything you want, go anywhere you want.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
the needs of the Army.
Yeah.
And, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And we can get you in right away. So I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, I need money. So let's do this.
Yeah.
And within like 2 weeks, I was finding myself at, the 30th AG going, what the hell was I thinking?
Yeah.
Why did I do this?
Made a massive mistake.
Yeah, I think everybody has that first morning you wake up and you realize, oh, life's different today.
Yeah. I fucked up.
And now is this how you guys got connected in the gym? I know you said the last episode, but that must have brought that the walls melted down a little bit easier
yeah.
when you found out that you guys went through similar experiences.
Yeah. Mine was a little bit more parallel on some of his side, where I had done it on the contracting side, rotating back and forth. And then just hearing his story and knowing where he was in life. And he was kind of at a spot where I was, maybe 7 years before that. And I knew the toll it had put on my family and myself personally. And I just, I had wanted to start the foundation. I was ready to start the foundation.
Yeah.
The company was growing rapidly. And he's a Green Beret. It's like, I don't need to, have somebody that's had 25 years experience. As a foundation, I have somebody that knows and understands the community, and you can adapt to any situation and figure it out. So, right guy, right person, right personality. So, I asked him if he was interested in, doing something different than what he was doing at the time, and finally got him to say yes.
As time goes on, I think he's second guessing himself now on his decision. But yeah,
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
I mean, at some point, did you ever think like, oh man, I'm getting over my head here? Or were you just like, fuck it, I'm in?
no, I was fuck it, I'm in. Like once
yeah,
we kind of laid it all out, and like that was the mission. I mean, I didn't know anything about being executive director of a nonprofit, running a nonprofit for that matter. But really, in the end, I mean, it just comes down to like I think a couple things, and a lot of it is networking 101. And you got to be able to do that, like in service in general, let alone like Green Berets kind of preach that a lot more heavier than most. But like even in service, you got to network your ass off, And it just once we developed that out, it was. From there on forward, I knew that this was our mission.
Yeah, I mean, we hit the ground running. It was easy because we knew what we wanted to do. We knew we had a vision how we wanted to execute it,
and also you had a good financial backing as well.
Yeah.
Like the for-profit side of things was doing very well.
Yeah, it started out and just kind of kept growing and scaling, and that's what we've been focusing on, since inception. But with the foundation, the thing that was important to me was having 100% of the proceeds actually go towards what we were trying to do with the foundation. So the operating company, Transcend, actually funds Transcend Foundation from an operations standpoint. So none of the overhead is, covered by any of the donation. That's actually, that just goes back into everything.
Nice. Is that as far as like his employment as well, is that's covered through
everything.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That is, it's always admirable to hear an organization that $1 in is $1 out.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that is the benefit of branching out of a for-profit company.
Yeah.
So before we dive into the foundation, I kind of want to go through the roots of how you established. You go from 11 X-ray to business owner.
Yeah,
and
11
founder.
X-ray to contracted intel operations, and I did that for like a decade in and out from a couple of different agencies. And kind of like many guys that rotated downrange, wife ultimatum, hey, this is number 7. I don't think you should do number 8.
Yeah.
So one of the other guys I was with was actually going to be a project manager on IT side, civilian world, totally something different than I had done before. And said, screw it. Yeah, I'll go and do the interview and see what happens. And they totally bought my bullshit and hired me for something I was completely not qualified for. And, I figured it out. And that's, I think what any of us do when we have to, right? You're observant. You just find out what needs to be done and just fall in and get it there, which was something I was good at.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot with, e-commerce and how that was working, because that was kind of my background at that point. And then, COVID hit, social media was big. I knew how e-commerce worked in, I had my own personal hormone struggles. And at that point, it was more of a requirement. Like, where am I going to get my meds? Because the clinic I was going to is no longer a clinic.
Yeah, it's shut down.
Yeah. Usually the business owners are solving their own problems.
Yep.
If you're doing it right.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. We went to the physician, business partner I had at the time was actually a company before Transcend. And he was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm going into something else. Here's my book of business. Here's the patients. You guys can figure this out. And I was like, oh.
Well,
thank you. This is awesome. Thanks, man.
That was great.
Yeah. So I had a couple of business partners time. We started up that company, which for legal reasons, we have, parted ways and, won't say the name of the company, but, it just didn't work out there.
Sure.
But the proof of concept was there, and I knew it was going to catch. So after a little bit of sulking, my wife just kind of looked at me and she's like, you're gonna do it again anyways. Why don't you just go and get it going?
Yeah.
So I literally went down into the basement where my office was and went online and filed the articles of incorporation. Went back up and I'm like, hey, look,
I'm doing it.
I'm doing it. And then I went to a couple friends and I'm like, hey, you want to get in on this?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. They instantly backed me.
Nice.
So I had the nucleus of what I needed, and my wife and I in our basement with a couple other guys that were in the industry, and we kicked it off. And it was going good just organically, right? We hadn't really gotten to the social media yet, and that was really where I wanted to get it kicked in. And then we got a meeting with Jason Poston. He was, men's physique, third in Olympia, great guy, big following. And he took our meeting, and again, he bought our bullshit. No, in all seriousness, he saw the point of what we were trying to do.
Sure.
And really at that time, not only just solving a problem, but being into fitness like I was, and a lot of the people at the company are, seeing a lot of people in the bodybuilding industry just passing away so early.
Yeah.
It was like there's a real problem here. So between that and then the influencers, especially on the fitness side, showing these glorious physiques, that are just amazing, which is not achievable in most cases to go through natural.
Sure.
And they're just not.
And it's detrimental internally.
Yeah, and it does something to everyone psychologically that's watching it, right? There's generations of kids that are now growing up on their iPhones, watching it on Instagram, and they can't understand why they can't achieve the same results, and now they're getting depressed, and it leads down a whole different bundle of issues.
Yeah.
So he really liked the idea of being able to speak up and speak out and say, yeah, I use them, and I use them appropriately and under doctor's supervision, and I do it the right way. And we just gave him a platform to speak about that, and then he was able to help us with the influence to bring in new patients. And then once we had one influencer, we had two, and then we had four, then we had 30.
Yeah.
And everything just climbed. And we went from like 4 employees again in the basement to now we have like 75 employees in a 30,000 square foot office.
Wow.
In less than 3 years. So
Yeah, that's
it's
incredible.
been just explosive.
Yeah. Massive explosion.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's
How
impressive.
impressive.
And watching your baby grow has got to be
yeah.
pretty fun to see, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's been a great ride. We've got to do a lot of things. You went to Olympia last year and sponsored it. We did a couple FitCons. We got to do a lot of things on social media, a lot of events, and then the foundation. We worked with 7X and all the things that they were doing last year. So there's just always something going on. There's always something next. There's always the next evolution of things, and we got a lot of cool things coming up. Things I won't say today, but another time I'll come back. But we do have some really cool things coming up. And we're just continuing to hire and find like-minded people. I will say the one thing I think that's been critical for the company and that really got us where we are today, and I know every CEO says this, the culture of our company, but I guarantee you go and talk to any one of the employees, any one of the staff members, any one of the senior leaders, anybody at any point in time, what's the most important thing to Transcend? Culture. What's the number one thing you look for when you go to find an employee? Culture fit. And it has the same thing: integrity, work ethic. Are they like-minded? Are they proactive? Are they caring and understanding and have a level of empathy? Did they meet these core values that are completely, must-have?
Yeah.
If you have those, we can teach you the rest.
Sure.
And you can't teach work ethic. So
I think that just nails on the head military.
yeah,
right.
It does.
That's where it was instilled from and passed on to. And Christian and I do this same exact thing with Terra Arma. It's about the community that you're building, and everything else could follow suit, right? I think that's really important to note. Is everybody's trainable,
Yeah.
Yeah.
if they have the right fundamentals in place.
Yeah. What's that mantra? Like hire for character, train for skill.
Yeah.
It's true, and it's accurate.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very accurate. Yeah, I can't teach you to be responsible, and I can't teach you to be accountable.
Or proactive.
or
That's the
proactive.
big thing too.
Yeah.
Is
Or care about the people you're actually working with and the people you're trying to work for.
Exactly.
It's number one thing we tell them. These are people that are coming to us that have medical issues that they need help. They're patients, not customers.
and
Very
there is
much
a
so.
stigma as well. Like there is an embarrassment that comes with it.
There is.
And how do you get past that? And how do you educate those around to be accepting of this?
Well, great question, but I think the social media was the answer to the question. Actually getting with the right influencers that align with the company values, and then getting them to understand our process and our methodology. Then they were able to educate everyone else. Like, hey, these are common issues that everyone has. These are why they have them. This is how you can fix them. They're very fixable. It's affordable. It can be convenient, and blood work is important for these other reasons. So you get that message, streamlined and repeated, and you find out that it's successful. And then, you get a core group of patients. You start a community, and they tell their friends, and they tell their friends. So a combination of just organic growth, and then using social media as an educational tool to remove that stigma and give people an opportunity to understand what it can do.
And there's a difference, right, between you and everyone else. There's got to be, if you're going to start your stand up your own company.
Yep.
What made you different?
Great question. We put the control in the patient's hands. How many times you go into the physician and you told them all your symptoms, and maybe they listened to 2 of them, and then they wrote you a prescription, and then they sent you off.
Well, actually, funny enough, at least the VA and TRICARE systems is you're only able to address 2 symptoms at a time. I remember going in, I had 3 issues. He's like, no. You can only have 2. You have to schedule a follow-up issue with it. And I was like, you're my doctor, man.
Yeah.
Telling me you're actively harming me right now.
Yeah.
Not addressing this.
So putting it in the patient's hands is so important. And today, with today's access to, you kind of have to be like that, right? As we're starting to see this across the board. I was telling Christian I had the worst VA mental health appointment of my life yesterday. And it was just diagnosing me via chart and not letting me, speak up and talk about it. And with access everywhere else now, you could go, literally, we saw this company just came out with a synthetic ibogaine solution.
Oh, God.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's access to everything now, and it's not done in the proper manner. So you have to have that one-on-one relationship with your patient. So you're bringing that to the table.
Yeah, and we do it in a pretty unique way, being able to do it through telemedicine. First thing, we're private pay, and we do that intentionally because we don't have to deal with Medicare and Medicaid guidelines and the restrictions and insurance and bill back and all of that nonsense.
Yeah.
It actually controls the way that a physician can handle, healthcare and the patient's needs. So we removed that block, and then I went independently and went to our vendors that were going to be our pharmaceutical providers and negotiated prices so they'd be very close to what you would get through an insurance.
Okay.
They're not 100%, but they're as close as we could get them, and they're definitely something that's affordable. So that was the first thing. And then we had coaches we instilled that are actually hand walking you through the process. So, you go to the physician's office, you sit there, the nurse gets you, you go back. With us, you've called us and we have somebody explaining everything to you, providing every bit of information, making sure you're comfortable. We get a health history on you. And then we find out what your goals are. What do you want to address? And then we get the blood work. When we get the blood work, the next thing we do is we explain everything to you. We go over through all of the markers. Not just going through the base hormones. We're not just going through the base panels. We're actually doing a full workup on everything. And, for all the physician's fees and for the entire blood work to get everything done, it's under $400 for the year. So, it's not horrible.
Yeah.
Compared to some of the other companies out there, I would say it's probably one of the most affordable.
Absolutely. I was using a local company before I switched to Transcend, and it was incredibly expensive in comparison.
I'm sorry, what did you say it was annually?
Yeah, so the physician's fee and for your markers, it's actually $369, I think. So it's it's under $400.
For the whole year.
Way better.
Now, we do follow-up lab work, but it's a lot less intrusive at that point because we already have your initial, we know what your protocol is, we know what your symptoms are, so we just kind of dial that back and down. So there's follow-up labs, but they're very inexpensive, not even a third of that cost. So,
So last episode, we kind of dove in a little bit to why the military is so affected on the hormonal level, right? And that's the lack of sleep and the stressful environments, your fight and flight responses. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about the science behind it as well. And lo and behold, how the Transcend Foundation was created to address a problem, military and first responder wide.
Yeah, so military first responder, for profit side, it's really the same. We do that root cause analysis. We actually address all of the issues that we can, at least through the imbalances and things we're seeing. So on the foundation side, where we're looking at the first responders and the veterans, they've had high levels of stress for a long period of time, whether it's mental, physical, or both. So you have adrenaline fatigue, you have high cortisol levels, the fight or flight. You've had people with TBI that have had damaged pituitary glands. You've had vitamin deficiencies, and then DHEA deficiencies, and all those things are affecting hormones in a high magnitude.
Yeah.
So being able to go and find out where that is first, then you can get everybody back to base, get them feeling normal again, and then we can look to optimize them if we can. And then if there's other treatments that they need, one of the things we did in the foundation is we're kind of developing a mesh network. So we work with like-minded foundations that we can reach out to. Somebody specializes in mental health, we get a hold of them, and if somebody specializes in spiritual, marital, or financial, or housing, we just built that network.
Back to that holistic approach, addressing the patient from a top-down perspective.
Yeah, from a top-down perspective. And the other thing that I don't think people realize with the foundation is their patient's patient for life. So we're not just going to be like, oh, here's some hormones, great, you're feeling good again, you're off, and good luck. As long as there's a Transcend, there'll be a Transcend Foundation. As long as there's a foundation, we'll provide care. So if we bring somebody on, we're bringing them on in as long as we can.
Wow. That's a fantastic approach.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 40+ thousand nonprofits. We talk about this all the time, and a lot of them are very focused on giving an experience or a one-time lift up, which is it's valuable in its own way and in its own manner. It's necessary sometimes, but being able to bring something on for life or for long term like that, and helps shift somebody's life for the foreseeable future. I mean, that's impeccable.
A question just coming from a nonprofit background myself, as well as like how do we manage the scale of that, right?
Yeah.
Because we're always going to see, like for instance, you see some of these clinics, so we'll give you a trial run period, let's say a year long, right? And you get them, their bodies used to the product, and they're now they need it, and then it's like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
Now here's 50% off, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So now we look at that as it's kind of the perspective of like, well, now it's just a long-term sale, right? Now we're just looking to sell that. But how do you manage that scale? If does it just grow and we accept more and more, or?
To a certain extent. So one of the things we do is we're developing a system, and I hate to use the VA as something to reference, but we're looking at who needs the medication the most, who needs their services the most. So we want the applicants that are coming in to be triaged to say, all right, these guys need the medications, but financially they're viable, that they could probably afford this with the discount, or they can actually just afford this on their own.
Yeah.
So we're going to be a bit more choosy when it comes to who we're actually bringing on the foundation side, because we're doing a long-term commitment to these patients. So to be fair, we want to make sure that we're giving it to people that need it the most.
Yeah.
And then we prioritize that again by people that combat arms, multiple deployments, special operations, the guys that really, have needed it. And that's nothing against the conventional guys. I was conventional. But we just, the realistic thing behind this is they need it more.
Sure.
So,
Triage.
And it's the triage. And then, we just kind of have taken it from that standpoint and looked at it and, committed to them. But from scaling itself, I'm taking the same approach that we're taking with the company on the foundation side. So a lot of things in the background through social media. We partnered with a lot of great people, a lot with our influencers, a lot that's up and coming. And it's the same thing as electronic donation. So, we're putting out posts and awareness and through the website, through networking, through events, and then, just taking electronic donation in. And then as we bring on more donations, one thing I'm decent at in the business side is forecasting, understanding cash flow, understanding long-term effects, value, that kind of thing. So you could do the same thing when you're looking at cash flow and expense of what that's going to be for foundation for a patient, because there's a bit of regular, the flow to when you get somebody dialed in on treatment. So you have the idea of what that cost is going to look like.
Long-term.
Yeah, long-term. We've worked that out, done that math. And that's pretty much the determining fact. So if we get X dollars in donation, I know I can bring on X number of people, onto the foundation side.
And your for-profit is operationally covering the Transcend. So as that grows, you can understand your scale there too.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, between what we put into the foundation side from the for-profit side and what we've given to other foundations, we've given almost $1 million in about the last 12, 13 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
On top
should be
of
proud.
what you're already doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is that speaks volumes.
You
as
guys should
well.
be proud of that, very much so.
Well, I
am.
think it
I am.
also it's really important to note that you're with that kind of donation to external organizations, you're recognizing that you don't have the cure all,
Right.
And there's some, and I'm sure you're probably delving into a lot of mental health and those kind of like other therapeutic modalities that are out there as well.
Yeah, and mental health is one of the major aspects, probably the most important one that we're seeing.
Yeah.
And then it even goes into secondary PTS and the family network, and then, it just expands in from there. So, again, when we're triaging somebody that's coming in, we're looking at them not just as what we can do from hormones, but what are their long-term needs, what's in our network, and how can we work this? If we bring this individual in, are we going to be able to provide for them in the way they need from our standpoint, and do we have the network to give them everything else? As long as we can do what we feel is a good service for them, and we're not going to set them up for failure, we know we can set them up for success, then we're going to bring them in and we're going to get them baseline. We're going to get them back to where they're again feeling good. The symptoms that they were suffering from, are at least, I wouldn't say cured, but something that is manageable, right?
Addressed.
You're not going to get rid of chronic pain from everybody. You're not going to be able to fix certain medical conditions, and certainly from a mental health perspective, you're not going to cure that.
Yeah.
But you're going to provide an opportunity. And with the veterans, the biggest thing is once they start feeling better, they have hope.
Yes.
And if you give them hope, then they'll take that next step. Then they have the courage to go in and say, yeah, I'd like to try EMDR. I really have issues. And I probably came back and my spouse, took the front of all the everything, and we should probably go have counseling as a married couple, and same with all those other things.
Let's dive in deeper and dissect that a little
Yeah.
bit in the mental health aspect of things. You mentioned before the show that sometimes we need to address you hormonally first,
Yes.
before we could jump into other modalities.
Correct.
So, and I think that's so important to note is sometimes depression can be cured.
Yes.
Just based off of your hormonal imbalance, and we balance that up.
Yeah, it's 1,000%. Sleep cycle, circadian rhythm, dopamine issues. You talk about the low testosterone, high estrogen levels or no estrogen levels. Pituitary damage. All of these things can be addressed, obviously to certain extents. With the hormones, it's a little bit easier to balance out. With somebody that has TBI, it's a bit more complex. But we do have peptides. We do have medications that are pretty successful in helping in repairing some of the cellular level damage in the brain.
Yeah.
Which, again, gives them a bit more of an edge to have that confidence and ability to understand what's going on and then go and do that next step and actually have success when they don't have all these other comorbidities that they're dealing with.
Yeah, that's crazy to think that just depression could be just based off of a little imbalance.
Yep.
And people do jump to these other modalities all the time.
Yeah.
And going into without addressing this first, I mean, I'm sure you're seeing kind of a regress.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just a regress, but even to the point where at some points the therapies that they were seeking maybe weren't addressing the right symptoms and right issues. Even on the mental health side, it might not actually be anxiety. It might be PTS or a combination of both. Or because the testosterone was low, they thought it was depression, and then you get that balanced out, and now they don't have that. They have energy issues, so half of that goes away, but they're still sleeping like shit, and they're still having the nightmares and the other things. So there's still that emotional response to that memory that they need to reassociate into the brain, so that level of trauma comes down.
Absolutely.
That you can't do through medication. But if they don't also have the chemical imbalance on top of that, where they're depressed clinically, and chemically, their chances of success are greater, much greater after you've treated that first. And then you're not going to have issues where you're going after the wrong symptom, because it's not caused by something that was traumatic. It was caused by something that was an imbalance. Fix the imbalance, go after what has actually been traumatic.
And with a lot of military folks, it's typically a combination of these issues, right?
Yeah.
It's a little bit of post-traumatic stress. It's a little bit of depression, a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of hormonal imbalance, and maybe a little or a lot of all of those, but it's typically a combination of those. And that's, Dave and I talk to a lot of psychedelic providers and people who do psychedelic therapies. And that's always a very big point of topic, is to address the issues at the root first, and then utilize these to help get you over that
setting
right?
we talk about.
Yeah, but also going into it and having some therapeutic experience. Like if you're going to attend a psychedelic therapy specifically, we always recommend that you do a few months of therapy beforehand to get yourself prepared for it, to get yourself be able to integrate, because you're going to have this big experience. You're going to have no tools in your toolbox to be able to enforce it and do integration afterwards. Same thing here, right?
Yeah.
If you're having these issues, you need to address it from a multitude of angles.
Yeah, and I believe the veteran community, especially the foundations and the ones that we're working with, have really been great in acknowledging and seeing that not everything is cookie cutter.
Yeah.
It takes more than one foundation to provide the right level of care and now
Collaboration.
We're collaborating and getting together, kind of doing what the VA should have done, 60 years ago.
No kidding.
But we're not a replacement. Definitely more of a Band-Aid, but you do the best you can with the tools that you have. And I think that just raising the awareness and, showing, hopefully the leaders out there that it can be done and how it can be done, hopefully they adapt to that.
Yeah, and that drives a good question too, more on the nonprofit side of things, is how do you navigate those waters engaging with other nonprofits, specifically with an older generation of individuals that have this stigma against this, right? This is something that people approach and they hear about it and they're like, well, this is just licensed drug dealers, right? We hear that quite a bit. And that's not the case at all. No. I know for a fact it saved my life, it saved his life, it saved everyone in this room's life, So we know that, knowing that, how do we kind of navigate that?
It's definitely a you question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think what was interesting on, kind of going back to, all right, Transcend Foundation, and, you said it pretty good on 40,000 plus nonprofits out there. So there's 1.5 million nonprofits, plus operate in the United States right now. Out of those, there's 43,000 veteran service organizations operating at any given time. And so Transcend Foundation's kind of mixed up in that batch just as well. And I would say, 99% of those foundations, are kind of stood up on a reactive standpoint, right? Like something happened, these foundations had a good cause, and they stood up to try and fix something that was broken in the system, right? Transcend Foundation's no different with that. We stood up, we saw a lot of veterans that were broken, first responders as well, and we wanted to be able to address them and balance them out hormonally. But I think what else kind of separates us, and a few things that we kind of came together with our inception of the foundation, was one, being able to kind of like identify, customize, and optimize their hormone levels, and be able to actually like kind of fix that first and foremost and bring their bodies back to homeostasis, back to baseline. So identify their blood work, customize a set of protocols to get them, there, and then optimize their kind of hormones, right? And then going into that mesh network, we've been kind of bouncing around talking about this mesh network concept, right? And it goes back to, it takes a village to raise a child, per se, like it kind of takes a village to heal a veteran, right? And so when you actually said it, you kind of stole a little bit of thunder there, because I'm like, there's a nonprofit that we're working with right now, Give an Hour, and literally Trina is awesome person over there, and she literally is like built out an entire team of docs like all across the U.S. that literally give an hour of their time for talk therapy. And I remember reaching out to Trina and talking to her, and she knew what we were doing and balancing out hormones, and she thought that was great. And I was like, Trina, imagine if all these patients that have spent hours and hours with you were balanced out hormonally before they started talking.
Light bulb.
It was, she was like, and not that they're not going to still get anything out of maybe those sessions, but it's like, now if you're balanced and then wholeheartedly talking about certain problems, like how much more beneficial could that be? So it was just that no-brainer.
How many more veterans can you help now, because there's shorter triage and treatment period?
And we talked about this as well, is that even on TRT, when you're not properly balanced, you're not taking the injections at the right time, you still feel like you're going to cry at Titanic.
Yes, you do. Some of us may have.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so finding that balance is and being able to leverage those relationships to implement as well as a complement is so important.
Yeah. And when you talk about the older generation of veterans and kind of breaking through those walls and getting them to be convinced of everything, I think a lot of it actually stems to our generation. Because a lot of them, those are our fathers and grandfathers, and they've seen what we've gone through, and it breaks their heart. And then you go through these treatments and they see, oh shit, it's helping.
Yeah.
It's working. That brings them in. So it's one of those things where it's the adage of you just got to do the work. You actually got to put in the time and the effort to show that generation that it is possible. And I think, our generation being open-minded to trying these things that are different opens the door for them on that. So a lot of it's been that way.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. And by the way, too, when I say older, I don't mean just veterans as well.
Yeah.
A lot of nonprofits out there, like you said, 43,000 are ran by corporate America, and they have no concept of being, in service themselves, too.
Correct.
So, when you see someone like, some blown, I don't want to say names at all, but blown up musclehead on TV, we see an abuse of this as well. Yeah. So, like finding that balance between doing what's right and utilizing these influencers as well, it's got to be a fine balance between that.
Yeah, and one of the things, like I said, it comes back to education, to let everybody understand therapeutic ranges and doses.
Yes.
Therapeutic, is the key word in everything that we do. We're not, putting people on cycles that are getting them ready for, competition or shows or whatever else they're doing athletically. We're addressing medical concerns and making sure that we're getting people, again, back to homeostasis.
And these are low doses that you could stay on year-round.
Yes, you can, for a very, very long time. And we approach it in a way where, less is more. We also have peptides we use, not just hormones, which are chains of aminos. They're signalers to the body that, have the body, respond with anything from regrowing brain cells, tissue, to tanning the skin, you name it. Growth hormone releasing peptides. There's thousands of them. Yeah. And they're not used in a manner where it's really, kind of caught on yet. Okay. And I think the fact that we have the research and that we have, some of the experts in that area, and we're able to take the medications that we know are good and trusted and put that up against the symptoms, and we're seeing really good, changes in our patients. That feedback and that data, we're taking that, we're analyzing it and recycling it, and then using it again in education to say, we've proven that these are working in this manner, in this way, keeping it documented. And that's one of the things that we just did, and I'm very excited about it, is we're actually bringing on an AI, chief AI officer, somebody who worked for, NSA and some other places.
Okay.
Very smart individual. I won't say his name. And, we brought him on specifically for data, and like I said, some of the cool things we're looking to do is, partner with some military units, highly specialized, and getting some of their data, long-term, and cross-referencing that against what we have, and then looking if we were to let AI into that, how could we develop protocols for these things? Because the idea of this is, get it before anyone's injured, right? So we're doing it already too late. Let's back it up before to the point when somebody actually is a private and joins. Get their baseline of homeostasis is, okay, now what peptides or things can we use into an everyday regimen that's going to prevent injury or prevent or help from getting a mental issue and then taking them off the battlefield, right? Yeah. So now that investment in time that the government's put into the resources, they're going to be able to utilize for a much longer time period, and the person coming out afterwards of their service isn't going to be messed up.
Yeah, of course.
At least hopefully not as bad.
Which takes us to our, back to the comment of like 99% of most nonprofits are kind of reactionary, right? Yeah. Well, again, Transcend's no different, but we also want to take that step to be that 1% that's proactive. We want to eventually collect this data that we're doing right now, hand it over to the DOD, and be able to be like, hey, look, if you want more longevity within your service members for the life of it, and by the way, you're most likely going to probably cut down on the cost of VA expenses on the back end because you're keeping these guys healthy longer, like that, and then be able to deliver this data to them and kind of be like, what?
It's more than just a VA too. You talk about the DoD operational, the expense budget, the medical side of that, long term, the secondary effects of that. significant impact. And given the fact that our pool of candidates for service is, greatly reducing due to some of these issues already, identifying this, at that age where they would enter and being able to address that, hopefully you can resurge some of those people that wouldn't have gone in and actually make them viable candidates and then keep them on.
Preventative medicine.
Yeah, preventative medicine definitely
is the way to go, and you see that those dollars add up in the back end. I mean, I've been saying for years is that we should give our infantrymen some hormones because, come on. Let's talk, these Russian Spetsnaz people. Jesus Christ, compared to our infantry nowadays, we're just
tough.
My feelings today.
The Spetsnaz isn't going to ask you about your feelings.
No kidding.
No one will. So,
go
ahead. No, please.
Yes. So with introducing this to the DoD, what kind of walls are you expecting, or what kind of hurdles are you guys expecting? Is this
less than you would think?
Okay. I figured you'd be sitting in front of Congress, to be honest, trying to get this.
Don't put that too far past us.
Okay.
We have a great network within the foundation,
and
we've partnered and found some really good contacts that we've been able to put in context with what we're doing and why, and then giving them the data. Now we're getting access to the kind of prove yourself stage. We're gonna open the door a little bit and kind of tell you what we're doing, and then maybe allow us to partner in on a few things, and kind of it's baby steps. But those baby steps have to be taken. Trust has to be earned. Performance has to be proven. The one thing that is good about the military in the process is they make sure that whatever they're buying, they're getting what they buy. At least medical.
Not
in all things.
More than
not F-35s, but that's a different story.
Not F-35, not Humvees. But on the medical side, it's a little bit different.
more like bang for your buck.
Lowest cost, technically acceptable.
There's quite a steal on these Vietnam era helmets.
Only one hole.
Don't get shot there.
Oh man,
that's interesting. I was curious. As we've seen, we haven't focused too much on the hormonal side of things, but we do cover the alternative modalities for mental health, and we're starting to see the DoD open up testing, specifically within the psychedelics. Now they're doing testing with MDMA, and they're talking about synthetic psilocybin being offered to active duty service members to assist with PTSD and TBI because there's viable results behind it. And I think we've tied our hands so much over the last 20, 40, 50 years with the war on drugs and everything and negative perceptions. I think it really does come down to, like you said, education, right? Telling them the truth and put your feelings aside. What you were taught about this 30 years ago was incorrect. Look at the data, look at the hard numbers.
And it's a unfortunate stigma that you've had the wrong people using these medications for a very long time, and that's what's been the forefront in everyone's mind. So not only having the opportunity to educate them, but then to show them what it really looks like when it's done correctly, it takes time. And that's what we're in the middle of right now. That's the biggest challenge is the race against the need for these treatments, in multiple different areas, and the time it's going to take to get them to them. That's what we're trying to cut down as much as we possibly can, which is what Brendan does a great job on. He's on a plane, a couple times a month, going to meet with not just other foundations, but, people that we're branching out to in corporate America, people we're branching out to that are influential on the Capitol Hill. And, we're having these conversations daily, weekly, monthly, and making plans and getting in where we can to provide data and get data back. I think we're in the midst right now of a couple projects, I would say, where we should have some data to actually share. So I'm looking forward to that soon.
That's exciting.
I think the data is so important, and I think it needs to be noted as well as that across any modality, there's going to be some abusers out there. And you see that very, very clearly, and I think that's where the stigma comes for TRT. And same with the psychedelic medicine world is, too much is not good for you.
Exactly.
Anything.
Now, if the clinic is doing it right, then they would be looking for controlled medication or anything that's prescription. There's state and federal stipulations that you have to check to make sure that the medications are being properly dosed and dispensed. So if somebody comes to us from another clinic who wants to get testosterone, we can see that they've already had testosterone recently from another clinic. We're not going to prescribe to you. We're not going to give you over the FDA allowed amount.
Okay.
So, we control that within our own confines, so we don't support the negative connotation behind it. We're eliminating that factor right up front.
Sure.
And that's how it's supposed to be.
And that has changed in the last decade. I mean, communication between medical practitioners across the board. Nowadays, you can't even go to the VA without that being identified that you're going to an external TRT clinic.
And rightfully so. I mean, it stems
Agreed.
from the opioid
You
crisis,
could kill yourself.
right?
And you're 100% right.
Yeah, pain management clinics prescribing 100 pills to one person 6 times a day.
And I used to do that myself, and going around the system is like, you could leverage TRICARE, and then you could leverage the VA healthcare system, and now everybody communicates, which is important because you could have people that kill themselves.
Yeah, and the other side of that too is the blood work, right? So you can tell us anything you want, but we're going to get the blood work back and see it. And if your test is like over 2,000, okay. Yeah. What are you really doing? No,
something's wrong here.
We can't prescribe you anything. You have to tell us what's going on and then get you back down to a therapeutic level. And that was the other thing too. We had to break down the wall on. People have done all sorts of things in their life. So if they've used, steroids, or they've used performance-enhancing drugs either in the past or they were currently using them, and they're trying to transition from that point of where they were doing it, below the books and off board, and now they want to do it the other way around, we're not declining those patients. We just need them to be honest.
Sure.
So that way we can get the blood work, see what's going on, know what's going on, properly diagnose, and then get them on the right protocols, and again, get them back to homeostasis to the point where their body is, where they should be. And then we can look at optimizing or doing things within safe parameters. But, again, education to say you don't have to do the things that way. The pro science you heard before, that's not the way it really needs to be. This is what it looks like. And then, again, through proven results and time, in education, it starts to come together.
I think it's important to note, too, that Transcend Company, I mean, when they pretty much stood up, you guys really kind of dominated almost like 1% of the market, with the top athletes, bodybuilders around the world, CrossFitters, even into WWE, NFL, right? And just kind of like these top, 1%ers of, athletes, right? And the irony in all that is that no doubt that, just that company and just maximizing that 1% category has done really well for, Transcend Company. It's important to note here that this stuff's for everybody. I mean, your neighbor across the street, anyone can get, proper blood work done and get finely tuned on hey, where they're at, where they need to get to optimize their body and to get where they're at. And so I'm really excited to see what kind of holds the future for us in the company.
Yeah.
I'm curious to some of the just to bring it to a little bit of a lighthearted question would be, what are some of the outrageous outreaches that you've seen? I know they're just in the nonprofit world we see some quite just entitled requests and just various things. I once had an amputee that reached out and said, I would like for you guys to build me a pool because I don't regulate properly my temperature. And I said, oh, really? Well, I happen to be an amputee as well, and I don't have a pool in my backyard.
We regulate just fine.
So I'm sure that you get kind of weird questions or weird charts or something. What's some off-the-wall situations you've found yourselves in?
Oh, my God. In the company on the profit side, we kind of jokingly have this in the DMs because the company has social media as well. And a lot of our coaches have it too. And they just get asked some wild shit all the time. Sometimes a bit more of an overshare. Sometimes pictures are sent.
Oh no!
You're like, no, we believe you. You don't have to do that or send that or
That's funny.
It's not safe for work kind of stuff. You see all the time. And
there's not a doctor behind these DMs. Go ahead, slow your roll there.
Yeah.
That's another one too. Is
what's this rash?
Yeah, exactly. So I was just gonna say is most of the time people are they find out you have the title and they're just willing to just spill the beans right away. Hey, take a look at this real quick.
While you're here.
Hey, brother, I'm at the gym. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's funny, ironically, I actually stopped going to the gym we met at. I'm like, I can't. I love everybody there, a lot of personal relationships, but it got to the point where it was like, I've been here for almost 4 hours and I've done 20-minute workout.
Because everybody's just talking.
Yeah, and I'm not the type of person to be like, just going to walk away or blow them off or pretend I can't hear them.
Sure.
I don't do that. So I'll take the time and, go through everything. And, at the point I'm like, well, I'm not putting an office here, so I better, keep this in the office and then find a private place to work out and all that stuff. But
bring business cards.
Yeah.
Sorry, dude, it's my workout time. You have something to offer though, and people are interested. So I understand why that would happen. But also at the same time, like you need some you time, right?
How many times do you get the hook me up, bro?
Oh, daily.
Hey, bro.
I can imagine.
And by anybody and everybody you can think of, I've gotten some phone calls. I'm like, what's this number? And the person on the other end is, somebody famous. I won't say any names. And it's like, we can help you out. And they're like, okay, this is what we want. It's a laundry list of things. I'm like, that's not how it works, man.
Entitlement.
Sorry.
Across the board.
You have to go through the blood work. And,
Well, I'm just looking for this stuff. This is exactly what I want. Like, well, sorry.
We're not Amazon.
Something I've noticed over the last hour or so when talking to you, Ernie, and same for you, Brendan, is you have a morality filter with everything that you've spoken about today, whether it's the foundation or the business or your approach to it. It seems like you run everything through, I guess, a morality filter. Like, is this what's right to do for myself and for others? And that's kind of what I've seen, like in a trend in the way that you're talking about things. And I just wanted to highlight that and say, it's admirable. It's a very admirable thing to do. It seems like you guys are looking to do the right thing no matter what it ends up costing or how much extra work it might be.
Why are you spilling our secrets all over this podcast? Come on now.
That's the secret to business that no one will tell you is there's enough pie for everybody.
There is.
There's enough pie for everybody. Just do the right thing.
Yeah.
Like really, that's what all it comes down to.
Yeah.
You guys could have very aggressive business tactics, and you guys could be shitting on other companies, but you don't do that. And guess what? You have one of the largest companies in this category in existence right now.
There's a few competitors out there that are fairly large as well.
Sure,
but I can tell you this much: we have decent contacts with them, and instead of being at a point where there's those social media wars or these other things. There's different approaches to everything, and not everybody's a fit for each company's, and the market is large enough. It's also one of those situations where you're learning about these medications and therapies, and it's almost better for everyone to know and understand that hey, we've tried this and it works. We've done this and it works. So you can learn from each other just as well and still compete. It just it's better that way.
I think that's the premise of what business is evolving to now. It's like collaborative competition.
Yeah.
Which, I'm sure you see on the foundation side as well as, hey, like we understand that your mission statement is mental health, and we're TRT. Let's put the two together.
Yeah.
And see where we could come out. And it's mutually beneficial.
Yes.
Very.
And that's one of the things that I noticed when I first, as the foundation was starting to stand up and I was like reaching out to tons of nonprofits and I was calling Green Beret Foundation, Navy SEAL Foundation, Pararescue Foundation, and started talking to their executive directors or programs managers. And I'm just telling them about, hey, kind of what we're doing and everything on the back end. And they were like, wow, we're not, we don't really offer that type of modality right now. And they're like, but that sounds cool. Like we would love to kind of like work with you guys. And so the whole concept of that mesh network build out, was like really cool to be like, what, you guys are doing some really cool stuff on HBOT and some EMDR and this, that, and the other and talk therapy. And it's like, man, we're over here like balancing a lot of people's, hormones out and getting them back to baseline and feeling good. So it's like, let's work together in a collaborative effort and, to try and heal these veterans and first responders as wholeheartedly as we can. And it's been pretty unique on that front. And then plus the relationships that you start to kind of build out with them. And it's pretty cool on that front. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. It's amazing to see what you guys have put together, and we nail it all the time too, is continued service.
Yeah.
And I think you've taken the fundamentals from the military, applied it to your business, and it just feels good at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, I couldn't lay my head down at night knowing that we're doing the right thing all around. And, not to say that, companies don't make mistakes and you don't have a bad apple here or there, but like, I go back to the culture of the company, how we do things, and it's actually the point where I am very fortunate that our staff, of any age or any background, they'll come to us and they feel comfortable with leadership and say, this person's not pulling their weight. They're not doing what they're supposed to. They're not acting in line with the culture, and they're not doing that to, spotlight ranger themselves. They're doing that because they genuinely see that this isn't a fit, and they want to either help that person, level up and get in with the culture, or they want to make sure that that's not toxic and, he destroys it.
Yeah.
They protect it as much as I do, which
good.
is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hard to find.
It's hard to build.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you got to build it. You can't find it.
Yeah.
Incredible. Incredible.
Well, thank you guys very much for your time today. It's been it's very enjoyable learning about you, Ernie, what you guys have done with Transcend, the Transcend Foundation. I mean, I think you guys are going to go a long way, and I'm really excited to see what happens for not only the company in the future, but the people that you're able to serve continually. I think you have a big undertaking, but
Yes.
it seems like you guys are well on your way.
Which is equally, I love to see is just badasses with huge hearts.
Yeah.
I think that is another stigma that's out there, right? Is that, the 11 X-rays, the special forces, the special operations guys, are just these tough dudes with no feelings, and they want to kill everything that moves. But at the end of the day, it's just give yourself the opportunity to help.
Yeah.
And that's why you got into it, right?
Yeah, it is. Ironically saying, though, it is hilarious that every time I pop on a Zoom with somebody, like a new vendor or, somebody on the business side or another CEO, I am the last thing they expect to see when that screen pops up. Like, oh, you're the IT guy. Nope, I'm the guy.
Yeah, I'm
Well, just and then wait till they see your freaking boots, man.
Crazies.
Yeah.
I love them, man.
Got
boots.
I
Gotta
love
have
them.
'em.
Yeah.
I love it. I love what you guys have built, and it's great seeing like-minded individuals who have just gone above and beyond the ability to serve their country, now serve their community. So thank you guys so much for coming on the show. Last-minute comments you have for the guests. Where can we find you all?
You can find us at Transcend HRT on Instagram, or you can find us at www.transcendcompany.com.
Fantastic.
Hell yeah.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Of course. This has been the Medevac podcast, ladies and gentlemen, with Ernie Colling and Brendan Quisenberry. Again, if you haven't seen Brendan's other episode, go check that out and interact with this video somehow. Like, share, do those things.
Reach out. If you guys have any questions about TRT, these are the guys to ask, and we will bridge the gap where needed. So please leave a comment. Any questions, concerns?
Yeah, what he said. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Till next time.